And in every transitional justice system, there's this inclusion of guarantees of non-recurrence, but actually when you go, for example, to a peace agreement, you can see that it is not very well defined what it is. What are guarantees of non-recurrence? That's the key topic that each country had to deal with because it's very context related. Dealing with that question requires going through a very difficult and tricky process because it is different from the other kind of mechanisms of transitional justice, because this requires to identify specifically what the country needs to guarantee non-recurrence of the conflict or the dictatorship or whatever. The hard thing about it is try to be as precise as possible, that you can identify specific measures or mechanisms to guarantee non-recurrence. And it requires, of course, that a society is able to identify some sort of causal link between the violence and what requires to be done to stop that violence. So it is very context related, and it depends very much on a very good diagnosis process. So that is why it's very complicated. And in every transitional justice system, there's this inclusion of guarantees of non-recurrence, but actually when you go, for example, to a peace agreement, you can see that it is not very well defined what it is, because I think that it depends a lot on what the full process of implementation of an agreement achieve. So in this case, I think that is why very difficult to talk about guarantees of non-recurrence in a general sense. So in the Colombian case, this has been a very tricky question, and I think that we have been focusing much more on the justice mechanisms, the truth mechanisms, the reparations, but we have just in a way overlooked what we have to do with the guarantees of non-recurrence and what it actually means to us. So for example, in the final report of the Truth Commission doesn't use the term guarantees of non-recurrence. Instead, the commissioners used the term of factors of persistence of the conflict. So the difference might seem like just a technicality, but the reality is that if you say factors for persistence, you are saying that we are in an ongoing conflict, instead of saying guarantees for non-recurrence, that you say that we stopped at some point and we're starting something new. So this shows that there's a very difficult aspect on grasping what guarantees of non-recurrence actually are. And one other aspect that I think is very important and that we could have done better is try to separate the development policies and the transitional justice measures. Because when we have this broad approach to what causes or what allows the conflict to keep going, as what happened in the peace agreement, that all the rural development related things are assumed as something that enables the conflict or the violence, you cannot put the finger on specifically what you need to overcome violence, because you are having this broad approach to poverty and lack of access to education and land and housing and all these development related measures, that it's as long as you don't, as a society, don't achieve those measures, you are not going to be able to guarantee non-recurrence. So it is very difficult from a public policy approach to combine all those things, because it is difficult to separate, okay, what do you need to guarantee non-recurrence? And in part, this is because we have focused on the other mechanisms, and we have neglected and tried to just overlook guarantees of non-recurrence. So I think that put more attention on what does it mean, because in the end, I think that's the purpose of transitional justice. It's something that we didn't do very well in Colombia.